on the 28th of Rajab. And outside Medina, there was a place, a tree at which people would normally go out with their families, and then at that point they would separate, and those who went back home would go home, and those who set out on a journey would set out from there, and it was called Shajaratul Wida. Imam al-Hussein made his final wasiyah to his grandmother, the wife of the Prophet, Salama, and he reminded his grandmother Salama and said, if you ever are worried about me, my Jad left some sand with you that Jibreel had given him. As long as that sand has not changed to blood, then you should know your Hussein is still alive. He then gave her some books and some scrolls as his will and said to her that when this qafila returns, I will not be with them, but my son Zainul Abidin will be with them. You must give this and hand this over to him. The qafila now sets out, and Imam al-Hussein decides he will seek refuge at the house of Allah and go towards Mecca. And so they head south towards Mecca. It is undoubtedly something I believe that as they were leaving and Medina was disappearing on the horizon, they must have been looking back at the walls of Medina. Imam al-Hussein knew he was not coming back. It must have weighed on his heart that I will never do ziyarah of my Jad again in Medina, or that I will never see the grave of my mother again. And I tell you, many of us are immigrants. When you leave your hometown, if you set out for a fixed amount of time and you know you're coming back, it is not difficult. If you set out not knowing when you will go back, you hope you come back. But if you set out knowing you will never go back, it is very difficult for one to leave one's watan. So Zainab and Kulthum as well must have had the same thoughts and feelings, looking at the walls of Medina disappear in the horizon and thinking that when will we return to Medina? Fatima Sughra must have been thinking, when they return, my Aliyun al-Asghar will have grown up, and hoping that they will return soon. But from the books of Aza, we understand that when Zainab left, she was anxious to return to Medina. But when she came back towards Medina and she saw the walls of Medina, she did not want to enter Medina. The qafila of Imam Zainul Abidin stopped outside Medina. The people of Medina had to come out to bring Zainab back into Medina. And we are told that when the daughter of Ali saw the walls of Medina, and the thought crossed her mind that there is no Hussein in Medina now, that I must now go to the qabr of my Jad and tell him what happened. Zainab did not enter Medina on a camel. She fell from the camel on the hot sands outside Medina. And Kulthum began reciting a marthiyah. Medina tu jaddina la taqbalina. Medina of our Jad, do not welcome us anymore. فَبِالْحَسَرَاتِ وَالْأَحْزَانِ جِئْنَا. We have come to you with remorse and grief. خَرَجْنَا مِنْكِ بِالْأَهْلِينَ جَمْعًا. Medina, we went out with our entire family. رَجَعْنَا لَا رِجَالًا وَلَا بَنِينَا. We have returned, there are no men, there are no children in our laps anymore. This qafila comes to Mecca. أَجْرُكُمْ عَلَى اللَّهِ. Imam al-Hussein stays in Mecca for 4 months and 10 days. The Sahaba keep coming for Umrah. They see Aba Abdullah. News begins to spread around Arabia that Hussein has refused to do bay'ah of Yazid. Hussein has said, Mithli la yubayi' mithlu Yazid. One who is like me shall not pledge allegiance to one who is like Yazid. The people of Kufa hear of this. They begin writing letters to Imam al-Hussein. Come, O grandson of the Prophet, we await you. Come, guide us and be our leader. We will fight Yazid behind you. O Hussein, the dates have ripened. Our hearts are anxious. We cannot tolerate being separated from you. Letter after letter, messenger after messenger, Hussein collects a camel load of these letters. The Mawsam of Hajj approaches. Imam al-Hussein gets ready for Hajj. He puts on the ihram. Then he receives news that Yazid has sent assassins to attack him while he is doing tawaf around the Kaaba. Madloom Hussein decides he will not desecrate the holy place. He changes his niyyah from Hajj to Umrah and removes his ihram. On the 8th of Dhul Hijjah, the day of Tarwiyah, when every Muslim going for Hajj is now in Mecca waiting to go to Arafat, Gharib Hussein with his small qafila leaves Mecca and is heading now towards Iraq. People say Hussein was taken by surprise. Hussein did not know where he was going. Hussein was surrounded in a desert. By Allah, Hussein knew what he was doing. Hussein could have left sooner with the letters he was receiving from Iraq. But he waited for the day of Tarwiyah so that no Sahaba can say that we did not know that Hussein was Madloom, that we did not know that the grandson of the Prophet was leaving. And before he left, he wrote a letter to Muhammad al-Hanafiya in Medina. He said to his brother, Inni lam akhruj ashiran wala batiran wala dhaliman wala mufsida. For those who call themselves Salafi and say that Hussein made a mistake in rising against the Caliph Yazid and he wanted power, Hussein clarifies this 1400 years ago. I did not rise to cause fasad or to cause dhulm. He says, Innama kharajtu litalabil islah fi ummati jaddi. I am rising now only to reform the ummah of my jad. Uridu an amuru bil ma'ruf wa anha anil munkar. I only intend to enjoin good and forbid evil. Wa asiru bisirati jaddi wa abi Ali ibn Abi Talib. And I will follow the path and the course of my jad and my father Ali bin Abi Talib. What Hussein is saying is, I do not simply reject Yazid, but I reject the 20 years that Muawiyah ruled before my father, because I will follow the seerah of Rasul and the seerah of my father Ali bin Abi Talib. Hussein leaves Mecca. He now heads towards Iraq. Hussein, before leaving Mecca, sends his cousin Muslim bin Aqil to Kufa to assess the situation and find and measure the sincerity of the people of Kufa. Muslim bin Aqil comes to Kufa. At first the people of Kufa welcome him. They incite him and tell him, write to your Mawla Hussein and tell him to come as soon as possible. Yazid sends Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad. Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad turns the matters in Kufa and establishes a curfew. He threatens the people of Kufa with death and with punishment. Muslim bin Aqil is left abandoned. He is taken to your Mawla Hussein and tell him to come as soon as possible. Yazid sends Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad. Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad turns the matters in Kufa and establishes a curfew. He threatens the people of Kufa with death and with punishment. Muslim bin Aqil is left abandoned. He is taken to Darul Imara. He is taken to the top of the palace and beheaded and pushed from the palace. Hussein is on his journey towards Kufa when Muslim is killed. And the ilm of ghaib that Hussein has, the people see that as Hussein is walking towards Iraq and moving towards Kufa, he suddenly turns towards Kufa and says, Wa alayka salam ya Muslim. This was the salam that Muslim was giving to Hussein. As Muslim stood at the top of the palace before he was beheaded, he turned towards the desert and said, Mawla, if only there was some way for me to reach you and say, oh Hussein, turn back to Medina and do not come to Kufa. Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. Hussein turned and said, Wa alayka salam ya Muslim. A messenger on the way from Kufa came and said to Hussein what had happened. He said, oh Hussein, I have seen the body of Muslim being tied to a horse without a head, and it was being dragged in the streets of Kufa. Hussein alayhi salam, when he heard this, he set his camp in the middle of the desert. The wife of Muslim and the daughter of Muslim were with Hussein. Muslim had a young daughter just like the Sakina of Hussein. Her name was Hamida. Some say her name was Ruqayya. Hussein stopped his qafila. He pitched a tent to mourn for Muslim. He said, call me the daughter of Muslim. Bring Hamida to me. The little Hamida came to Aba Abdullah al-Hussein. Imam al-Hussein took Hamida and set her on his lap. Then he began rubbing the head of Hamida. Then he asked someone to bring some earrings. Then he brought earrings and he put them on the ears of Hamida. Hamida is from the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. She turned to her uncle Hussein. Ammu Hussein, have I become yatim? Why are you treating me as orphans are treated? I would say, Mawla Hussein,
Mawla Hussein, let not Sakina see how you treat Hamida, for Sakina might come to believe that this is how Aitam are dealt with. What awaits Sakina after Ashura will be very different from how you treat Hamida. Ajrukum ala Allah. But Hussein alayhi salam continues towards Kufa. Hussein does not stop or change his course. As he comes towards Kufa, he is met with an army that is led by Hur. We shall speak of the army of Hur at a later night. But Hur gives an ultimatum to Imam al-Hussein and says, I have been commanded that you cannot enter Kufa. Then Hussein says, I will return to Medina. Hur says to Imam al-Hussein, no, you are not permitted to return to Medina either. You can go anywhere you like for now, or you can stop here, but you cannot go to Kufa or Medina. Imam al-Hussein, guided by a divine hand, he turns north now and he follows the course of Furat. As Imam al-Hussein is progressing, the army of Hur is following him. The qafila of Hussein is perhaps worried, not knowing where they are going. But Hussein is searching for something. Hussein is waiting for something. Ajrukum ala Allah. Imam al-Hussein comes to a desert. He comes to a point where his horse will now not move. Zul Janah will now not move. Imam al-Hussein dismounts from his horse. He asks for another horse. He mounts a second horse. The second horse does not move. Imam al-Hussein asks for a third horse. Then he asks for a fourth one. Then he asks for a fifth. The Arbab of Azza say, Hussein changed 7 horses, but none of the horses would move. When Hussein sees none of the horses are moving, he says, there is something about this place. He says, who lives in this, within this vicinity? They look around and say, there is a tribe here called the Banu Asad. He says, bring the people of Banu Asad. The people of Banu Asad come to Aba Abdullah al-Hussein. Sayyid al-Shuhala begins to ask them. He says, oh Banu Asad, does this land have a name? They said, yes, Mawla. This place is called Shattul Furat. He says, does it have another name? They said, yes, Mawla. This place is called Al-Qama. He said, does it have another name? He says, yes, Mawla, this place is called Nainawa. He says, does it have another name? They keep giving him names after name. Hussein is looking for something. When there finally is no name, then an old man stands up and says, Aba Abdullah al-Hussein, if you take my advice, do not stop on this land. This land is cursed. Whoever stops in this faces a lot of hardship. He says, why do you say that? He says, some people say this land is called the Ard of Karban wa Bala. But when Hussein heard Karban wa Bala, he knew this is the Karbala he is looking for. Abbas, he called out, Abbas in Zilu. Oh Abbas, we shall stop here, pitch the tents here. Hussein stops now in this land of Karban wa Bala. He says to Banu Asad, I wish to buy this land from you. The Banu Asad said, Yabna Rasulillah, this land is yours. He says, no, I do not want this land. I want to buy it from you. Hussein purchases the land of Karbala from Banu Asad. Then he gives the money, he gives the land back to them. He says, oh Banu Asad, the land is now mine. I give this land back now to you in exchange for a favor. They say, what favor do you wish from us, Yabna Rasulillah? He says, look, O Banu Asad, we shall stay here for a few days as your guests. We shall be your Mahman for a few days. Then we will be killed in this land. When we are killed in this land, our bodies will not be buried. Our bodies will be left under the hot sun. O Banu Asad, when you see our bodies under the hot sun, then in exchange for this land that I give you back, I ask you that you come and bury us and do not leave us unburied and unshrouded in this land. The Banu Asad promised Hussein, Yabna Rasulillah, we will bury your bodies. Hussein is still not satisfied. He says, O Banu Asad, now bring your women, I wish to speak to them. The Banu Asad bring their women folk. Hussein begins speaking to the women of Banu Asad. He says, O women of Banu Asad, look, when the forge of Ashqiya are around, your men will be frightened to bury us. They will not come out and bury us. When you go to Furat and fetch water, then come and bury us if your husbands do not come and bury us. The women promise Hussein and say, Yabna Rasulillah, we will come and bury your bodies. Hussein is still not satisfied. He says, O Banu Asad, I would like to speak to your children now. Now the children of Banu Asad come out. Hussein gathers the children of Banu Asad. He says, O children of Banu Asad, O children of Banu Asad, when you go out playing towards Furat and you see our bodies lying on the hot sands of Karbala, while you play in the desert, take some handful of sand and throw sand on our body. Alas, Gharib Hussein, such times have befallen the son of Zahra. Abbas gets down from his horse. Abbas begins to pitch the tents in Karbala. I tell you, my dear brothers and sisters, when you hear someone is going to Karbala, do you not feel envious and say, I gosh, if it was I who was going to Karbala? And when you go to Karbala, are you not impatient? Can you not find your heart beats and you say, I cannot wait to get to Karbala? And when you get to Karbala, I ask you sincerely, when you see the dome of Abul Fadl al-Abbas, do you not say, Alhamdulillah, at last I am in Karbala? But when Hussein reached Karbala, Zainab did not want to stop in Karbala. Zainab called her brother Hussein, Akhi Hussein, can we not stop? Can we not move away from this place and not stop here? Hussein asked his sister Zainab, oh Zainab, why do you not want to stop in this place? She says, Wallah, lakad adkhalani hawlan azima. Oh my brother Hussein, there is some great anxiety that has entered my heart ever since we stopped in this land. Zainab, what is it that bothers you in this land? She says, oh Hussein, I can hear the voice of a lady crying. It is the sound of a mother crying for her child. She is calling out, Wa madluma, Wa ghariba. Zainab, do you not recognize this voice? Zainab, this is the voice of our Amma Zahra. Zainab, ha huna yusfiku dima'una. Zainab, this is where our blood will be spilt now. Zainab, ha huna yudbahu atfaluna. Zainab, this is where our children will now be slaughtered. Zainab, this is where you will be tied in ropes. Zainab, this is where you will be taken as captives to Kufa and Sham. Wa Husayna, wa madluma, wa ghariba. Matam Hussein, Ya Hussein.